Hi, welcome to another Mind Motivation video. In this video, we're gonna take a look on how Steve Jobs is known for a pioneer of the personal computer, his early life and his innovations. Steve Jobs, an American entrepreneur, business magnate, inventor and industrial designer. He was the chairman, chief executive officer and a co-founder of Apple Inc., CEO and majority shareholder of Pixar. He was the founder, chairman and CEO of Next. Jobs and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak are widely recognized as pioneers of the microcomputer revolution of 1970s and 80s. Born in San Francisco to parents that were unable to care for him, Steve Jobs' early life was a struggle for identity. An adopted child raised by caring parents, one of the early wishes of his biological parents was academic success. The Apple Inc. co-founder reflected on this publicly in one of his famous speeches, explaining how important academic success was to his biological family. Most of Steve Jobs' life was not a very happy one. His early life was filled with confusion, chaos, and search for his biological parents for whom his education was an imperative thing. His faith and belief got turned on its head more times than one can count, and he faced several issues in his life for being the outstanding individual that he was. He was quirky, lived in his head, way too intelligent for his own good, and thought very differently than most people. Although at times it almost made him a pariah, his life journey is a story of a man who made his life count for something and gave to the world as best as he could. Steve Jobs, and adopted in Bay Area in 1955 by Paul and Clara. There had been issues right from the beginning regarding granting guardianship to Paul and Clara by his birth mother. She wanted to give her son up to a well-educated family so that he could attend college. Therefore, she had second thought about giving him up to the blue-collar couple Paul and Clara. She even took the matter to court and handed over the custody of her son only after she was promised that he would attend university. Paul and Clara adopted a daughter, Patricia, and moved to Mountain View, CA in 1961. Steve admired his father and he had a great deal with him. He loved the fact that his father had a workbench and could build anything with his hands. He also assisted his father in building cabinets, repairing fences, and doing odd jobs around the house. By the time he was 10, Steve had made friends with all the engineers around the neighborhood. Steve never really made good friends with people of his age, but he did not find any difficulty making friends with the adults. Steve was brought up in the countercultural lifestyle in California. It was the most taught that not to follow directions and resist authority figures. Therefore, it was not a surprise when he rebelled against his teachers starting from the elementary school itself. Steve played pranks on others and often reduced his teachers to tears at Montaloma Elementary School. His father, who was amused as a child, never wanted the same for his son, therefore rarely ever reprimanded him. His father was also a great believer in him, and therefore not at the school was not challenging him enough. Steve thought his fourth grade teacher that he was the reason that his schooling turned around. She used the bribery method, which doesn't sound like it would work, but in those days, $5 was a lot of money for a young boy to receive just to have finished his schoolwork. He stated that he had learned more in that 1 year of school than he had in all other years combined. That really kindled a passion in him for learning things. He learned more than year than he could think he can learn in the other year in the schools. Although he was initially suggested that he skipped 2 years, his parents didn't like the idea, so he skipped only the 5th grade and transferred to the Crittenden Middle School and got admitted in the 6th grade instead. Even though it ate up most of the savings for Paul and Clara, moved to Los Altos and got Steve moved to a better school in Cupertino. The new house had even more engineers around and Steve found seventh heaven. It was here that Steve made friends with Bill Fernandez, who also shared his hobby of electronics and in the same grade as him at school. Bill was responsible for a lot of good things. Other than having the honor of being his only friend in the new neighborhood, Bill was the one of that who had introduced Steve Jobs to Steve Wozniak, an 18-year-old alumni of the school who lived right across the street from Bill. At the age of 13, Steve Jobs got a summer job at Hewlett Packard. Steve has not even applied for the summer job, but he had just called to ask him for the parts. Jobs attended Homestead High School and began his first year there along with Bill Fernandez. Neither of them were from engineering household and both of them were very interested. They enrolled in electronics but soon lost interest since they were both electronically much advanced in the knowledge. In the mid-1970s, Steve discovered Shakespeare, Dylan, Thomas, and classic literary stuff which prompted him to take creative writing lessons. One that was in electronics and the other in art and literature. He was senior year, he was best friends and with Wozniak and his girlfriend Chris Ann Brennan was an art major. Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon in 1972. It was an expensive college and his parents could hardly afford it. Jobs decided to drop out of college because he did not want to spend all his parents' money on it. Instead, he continued to attend by auditing the classes, although he was not an official student. The main course he paid most attention was a calligraphy course taught by Robert Palladino. In 2005, at a speech at Stanford, he admitted having led a fairly frugal life at this time. In 1973, Steve Wozniak redesigned a classic video game, Pong. This led to Steve taking the game to Atari Inc., where he gave him a job of technician thinking that he had built that game. Steve was living a simple life at that time, living in a cabin, working at Atari and saving money for his planned trip to India. Steve Jobs traveled to India in the year 1974 with his friend from Reed College. He was Daniel Kotke. In search of enlightenment, they traveled in India. But when they were reached, they discovered the person that had come to meet him, he was already passed away. And so they decided to trek through the riverbed of Ganges and ashram of a different guru in Uttar Pradesh in India. After 7 months, when Jobs left India and returned to the US, he had changed his appearance. Steve also spent some time to commune in Oregon, where Brennan joined him. Steve returned to Atari and was assigned to create circuit boards for video games like Blackout. Experienced in this year, he decided to bring in his friend Wozniak to help in this task. Together, they created the history. They developed such a circuit board that was impossible to reproduce in an assembly line. But by those times, it was mere to design a low-cost blue box which could manipulate the telephone network, allowing free long-distance calls. This is what first gave an idea that there was money to be made in electronics and it could be both fun and profitable. In 1976, Wozniak invented Apple I. When he showed this to Steve, he suggested that we have to sell it. The two of them and Ronald Wayne formed a company together, naming it Apple Computers in the garage of Steve Jobs' Los Altos home. Wayne stated that he lived for a short time, and Wozniak and Steve had to be the actual primary co-founders of the company. Working out of his dad's garage, Steve faced a lot of negative comments from people in his neighborhood. According to Daniel Kotke, Steve was the only person who worked in the garage. Wozniak only supplied the codes. Most of the early work took place from his kitchen and door as they tried to find the investors continuously. Finally, they had received funding from Mike Markella, who was the semi-retired Intel marketing manager and also an engineer. By this time, Brennan had returned from India. By early 77, a prototype of Apple computer was ready, and later that year, Jobs and Wozniak introduced Apple II at West Coast Computer Fair. It was the first consumer product sold by Apple Computers and one of the highly successful mass-produced microcomputer products. The primary designer was Steve Wozniak. As Jobs became more and more successful in Apple, his personal relationships grew more complex. Steve Brennan moved in together along with Daniel in a house near the Apple office, and she took a job in their shipping department. However, she left Apple shortly following pregnancy, and she was ashamed of being unawed and pregnant with Steve's child. It led to her a hard life cleaning houses and living in different places. When the company went public and Steve became a millionaire, Steve was worth $1 million when he was 23, and at the time he was 24, he was up to $10 million. By the time he crossed the $100 million, he was just 25. In 1978, Apple recruited Mike Scott to serve as the CEO for the next few years. That had turned out to be the turbulent times for the company. In 1983, Jobs hired John Sculley from PepsiCo to serve as Apple's CEO. Scully and Jobs' visions for the company were so different that it led to a new division being created inside the company, and Jobs tendering his resignation, which the board declined and asked him to reconsider. However, a few months later, he did resign to the board, which led to another 5 senior employees to also resign and following Jobs to his new company Next. Jobs founded the company in the year 1985 after his resignation from Apple, and with the help of Ross Perot, who invested in the company, they showcased their first computer to the world. In the year 1986, Steve Jobs funded the graphics group, which was the computer graphics division of George Lucas. He had priced $10 million, the first film after his partnership that had made the story, and it credited Steve Jobs as an executive producer. It made animation company an instant hit, and people knew Pixar's name everywhere. In the year 1996, Apple announced that they would like to buy Next for $427 million. When the deal was finalized in the year 1997, it brought Jobs back to the company he co-founded. In 2007, they launched the first multi-touch cell phone for iPhone, which included the features of an iPod as well as a web browser. It was a very demanding perfectionist. He was both admired and criticized for his skills of persuasion as well as salesmanship. He aspired to position his product and his business at the absolute front of the IT industry by foreseeing and setting style trends for innovation. To be fair, he did that as long as he possibly could. There was a time when anyone had to have an iPod. Then when he launched a phone with the new OS, it was an instant hit, because if the multi-touchers had never before seen properties under the guise of a phone, he made the phone smart, and he will forever be credited with that title, which was never-ending aspiration to make portable computers. He conceptualized the iPad, a tablet computer that was so much more powerful than regular phones, but not as cumbersome as having a lug-around iMac. How many people do we see even to this day who is without their trusted iPads? In 2003, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Since the prognosis for such a cancer is usually very poor, he stated that he had the much less aggressive type of tumor. Jobs resisted his doctor's recommendations and denied treatment for a very long time. He tried natural healing processes to try and stop the disease from spreading. Steve tried a vegan diet, acupuncture, herbal remedies, and other treatment that is found online. He is even known to have consulted a psychic. By the time he underwent the surgery that okayed to remove his tumor successfully, it was almost too late. He, however, did not require chemotherapy and radiation therapy. 2 years later, in the year 2008, he appeared to be very ill again, and people were concerned by the way he looked. However, Apple was quite adamant that he just had a common bug. In January 2009, Steve Jobs realized that his wealth and his health was going downhill, and he applied for a 6-month leave to regain his health, at which time Tim Cook was made the CEO of Apple. Upon learning that Steve needed a liver transplant, Tim Cook offered a part of his liver to Steve, since they shared the same rare blood type. Jobs, however, vehemently refused to accept it. In April, Jobs underwent a liver transplant in Tennessee. In January 2011, after working a uniform after his liver transplant, Steve Jobs decided to take a medical leave of absence. Tim Cook was made the permanent CEO of the company. However, Steve was to be a part of any major strategic decisions that was to be made by the company. He appeared at the iPad 2 launch and also delivered the keynote speech introducing iCloud. It was only in August 2011 that he announced resignation as Apple CEO. He became the chairman of the board and surprisingly named Tim Cook as his successor at the helm of Apple. He continued to work for the company up until 6 weeks before his death. And the one fine day had come. Steve Jobs died at his home in Palo Alto, California, in the afternoon of October 5, 2011. The cause of his death was a complication from a relapse of his pancreatic cancer, which resulted in a respiratory arrest. Steve Jobs died peacefully with his family surrounding him. A small private funeral was held, but the details were not revealed to the public out of respect to his family. Apple, Pixar, Microsoft, Disney, everyone flew their flags half-mast in his remembrance from October 6 to 12 of 2011. Steve Jobs is buried in Automation Memorial Park, the only non-denominational cemetery in Palo Alto, California. His grave is still unmarked. Starting a company from a garage and making it a 9-digit company is really an inspiration to every youth. So, this is an inspirational story of Steve Jobs, an American entrepreneur, business magnate, and a designer, and the greatest salesman. Thank you for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit a thumbs up if you liked it.